What's going on, everyone? Jeff back with another video. In this video, I want to talk about 5 stocks that I've sold at a loss in 2020. So I try not to make it a habit of doing this very much. Most of the time, when I make an entrance in a stock, I'm usually committed to it long term. And sometimes my portfolio just gets crowded with too many positions. And for one of the next 3 reasons, I will take a loss in a stock and move on. So the first reason I will take a loss is I feel that the stock is descending downward, has further downside, and I feel like the path to recovery is going to take far too long. I have one stock on this list that definitely fits that criteria. The second reason I will sell at a loss is sometimes I just need to loosen up fresh capital for more appealing investments. Now, sometimes after 6 months or a year of holding a stock, might not be seeing much movement at all to the up or downside, and it's just stagnant. Doesn't really matter how profitable the company is, they're not growing, it's not moving in a direction I want to see it. A lot of times I will take a small loss to get maybe in an IPO company or a company that is growing a lot faster. And the third and final reason I'll take a loss on a stock, sometimes I need immediate funds to shift into a short sale or to buy options on a stock. And so trading out of a lot of different portfolios, like I said, sometimes I will have a position that's just not seeing any movement, but I need that extra $100 or $200 or $300 to fill a buy order out, and I'll go ahead and take a loss on a stock, and so I have enough funds to start trading with. So I also think it's very, very important to look at your body of work. Some of the decisions you made obviously reflect on the good ones, but always try to look back on your mistakes and learn from them. It's always very important to do that. If you ever lose the ability to do that, your ability to trade is going to suffer from it. So let's get into this, guys. Top 5 stocks I've sold at a loss in 2020. Before we get started, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video. I appreciate all the support. And make sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Alright, so the first stock I've sold at a loss this year is Novartis, ticker symbol NVS. And I took right at a 4% loss on this stock. Now, the reason I did so, guys, I've actually owned this stock going back to roughly June of 2017. I did not go through my broker and look, but I know I've shelved it for about 3 years, and this stock is just not doing anything. It's dead in the water, not making any moves up or down. And so here a few months ago, close to the start of the year, I decided to move out of this position. I did get several dividend payments that I did not factor into this, but it was just time to move on. This position is not growing. A lot of healthcare stocks, even the ETFs, are growing a lot more than this particular stock is. Novartis being one of the biggest companies in the world. I really entered this stock a couple years ago just to get more diversity into healthcare and pharmaceuticals. And so I'd be plugged in on earnings calls. They've always had pretty good earnings, just not the growth. This company's not showing any growth. Really, if you want to go back to August 28th of 2015, this stock was trading much higher than it is now. And unfortunately, guys, the past 5 years probably have been some of the most relevant years from the big shift in all companies moving to tech. This company is just kind of a dinosaur. I still think probably long term it is most likely going to be a good investment, but I would rather put those funds somewhere in the healthcare industry where I'm going to see more growth. And so I took a 4% loss on this one, moved on. All right, so coming in at number 2 is Cracker Barrel, ticker symbol CRBL. And I took about an 8.62% loss on Cracker Barrel this year in 2020. And the real reason I did that, guys, is simply because I think there is restaurant stocks that are far more exciting to invest in than Cracker Barrel. Even in 5 years' time, again, this chart pattern has basically just traded sideways, a little up and a little down. This would be a very good stock to play iron condors on because there is not very much volatility with Cracker Barrel. Unfortunately, I needed to see a little bit more growth. So I took about close to a 9% loss, got a couple dividend payments, held this one about 7 months. Since that time, I've deployed funds into more exciting restaurant stocks. McDonald's, Starbucks, Chipotle Mexican Grill. Now again, just because some of these stocks are on this list and they've made this video, guys, by all means, do not think that's me saying that they're bad stocks. They're just simply not growing in my portfolio the way I want to see them grow. And actually, I could have got a little bit more out of Cracker Barrel if I would have held a little longer, but I know some of the investments I've made really going going back even 3 months have blown this out of the water. I sold around the $125 mark. Now it's running at $138. So I could have held out a little longer and got most of my money back on this trade, or broke even on it. But if you look at the growth in Chipotle Mexican Grill and Starbucks over the past couple months, you'll see the right decision was to cut the losses on this one and move on. Simply put, you do not want too much diversity. You don't want so much diversity in one specific sector that you're watering down your gains. You want to focus more on the stronger stocks. Alright, now the third stock I've took a loss on this year, guys. Now we're getting into a little bit bigger of my losses, is Under Armour, ticker symbol UA, or also under the ticker symbol UAA. Now for some reason or another, Under Armour just cannot get their act together and crank out the earnings that I need to see to stay long-term invested in a company. That's continuously disappointing. And honestly, guys, I think it goes back to the quality of their clothing, because I know they have very good sales, but a lot of people consider Under Armour kind of a cheaper brand. You know, I would say 8, 9, 10 years ago, Under Armour was a much better brand, a much better company, put out a lot better quality clothing. In 5 years' time, this one is down 78%. So, pretty disappointing. I took about a 12.5% loss on Under Armour, cut my losses, and this really goes back to reason number one. The chart pattern was descending very rapidly, and the road to recovery was not very apparent to me, and this is one I'm glad I stopped the bleeding in, okay? Like Cracker Barrel, I could have actually held out and got more gains, but this one right here in particular, I sold right in the $13 range, and now it's trading around $9. So maybe, perhaps this is a good place to buy. Unfortunately, this company just cannot get it together on their earnings reports. And this is not at all what I would call a growing company. I think Under Armour really seen its peak of its growth in the early 2010s, and it almost is getting so cheap that it's probably a good acquisition for a bigger company. Alright, now we're getting down to my two biggest losses of the year. And the next stock we're going to talk about is Intel, ticker symbol INTC. I took about a 16.5% loss on Intel this year. And there is multiple reasons why I've moved out of Intel. First off, I am very overweight in my portfolio with semiconductors. Okay? I hold very large positions in Nvidia, AMD, Broadcom, and not only that, I also have a very large holding in the ETF USD. So if you pull up the description for USD, their biggest holding is Intel. So half of my reason for selling out of my stock position is because I still have a lot of exposure to Intel. But the second, and probably the most important reason I walked away from my position at Intel, is I just don't feel like they're growing, and they're not positioned for very much growth over the next 2 years. I think the stock price is going to be much cheaper than $50 a share. As we all remember on the earnings report, they talked about the delay of the 7 nanometer chips. And then of course, over the next 2 years, Apple is going to be leaving Intel. That's very, very big part of their yearly and quarterly revenue, which I have no doubt Intel will fill those contracts and still be a very successful company. But I just feel the next 2 years are going to be very rocky for Intel. There is a lot better positions to play in the chip sector, namely Nvidia, Advanced Micro, Taiwan Semiconductors, and of course Broadcom. Alright, now lastly, the stock I've taken the largest loss on in 2020 is Funko, ticker symbol FNKO. This is a stock that just got destroyed during the COVID-19 pandemic. Very small cap stock, and this is another one, guys, I feel very comfortable and am pretty happy. I cut my losses at about a 26% loss, a pretty good size loss. I usually don't like taking losses that big in stocks, and sometimes if I'm going to hold a stock into these type of waters where I'm taking that big of a loss, I'm going to buy more to cost protect and drop my cost basis down. And I sold at roughly the $8.50 to $9 mark, so it started dropping very, very fast. If you look at a 5-year chart though, it's actually probably in a very good place to buy. COVID-19 had a very, very sharp effect on this company's sales and earnings forecasts. And so this is one I had my limit order set. You know, if we get below a certain price to sell, I wanted about a 25% loss, ended up having to take about 26%, and I traded out and moved out of this position. So, and honestly, this was a very small position, so it did not make a huge dent into my portfolio. But with that said, guys, that is my top 5 right there. Novartis, Cracker Barrel, Under Armour, Intel, and Funko. So go down to the comment section, let me know what you think about this video, share some of your thoughts and opinions, and also feel free, don't be ashamed, to share some of your losses that you've taken this year. All traders and all investors have to take losses sometimes. It's just part of the game. Thank you as always for watching the video, and have a good day.